Ever wondered how Islam keeps families close? Let's dive in. In Islam, family is everything. Parents are honored, kids are cherished, and siblings support each other. Simple acts like sharing meals and praying together build stronger bonds. It's all about love, respect, and togetherness. Keep your family close because in Islam, family is our strength. Volume 7, Book 64, number 263, narrated by Abu Masud al-Ansari. The Prophet said, when a Muslim spends something on his family intending to receive Allah's reward, it is regarded as sadaqah for him. Volume 7, Book 64, number 264, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, Allah said, O son of Adam, spend and I shall spend on you. Volume 7, Book 64, number 265, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, the one who looks after a widow or a poor person is like a mujahid, warrior, who fights for Allah's cause, or like him who performs prayers all the night and fasts all the day. Volume 7, Book 64, number 266, narrated by Sa'd. The Prophet visited me at Mecca while I was ill. I said to him, I have property, may I bequeath all my property in Allah's cause? He said no. I said half of it, he said no. I said 1/3 of it. He said, 1/3 is all right, yet it is still too much, for you'd better leave your inheritors wealthy than leave them poor, begging of others. Whatever you spend will be considered a sadaqah for you, even the mouthful of food you put in the mouth of your wife. Anyhow, Allah may let you recover, so that some people may benefit by you and others be harmed by you. Volume 7, Book 64, number 267, narrated by Al-Amash, N.A. Volume 7, Book 64, number 268, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, the best alms is that which is given when one is rich, and a giving hand is better than a taking one, and you should start first to support your dependents. A wife says, you should either provide me with food or divorce me. A slave says, give me food and enjoy my service. A son says, give me food. To whom do you leave me? The people said, O Abu Huraira, did you hear that from Allah's apostle? He said, no, it is from my own self. Volume 7, Book 64, number 269, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, the best alms is that which you give when you are rich, and you should start first to support your dependents. Volume 7, Book 64, number 270, narrated by Umar. The Prophet used to sell the dates of the garden of Bani an-Nadir and store for his family so much food as would cover their needs for a whole year. Volume 7, Book 64, number 271, narrated by Malik bin Aus bin al-Hadathan. Once I set out to visit Umar bin al-Khattab. While I was sitting there with him, his gatekeeper Yarfa came and said, Uthman Abdurrahman bin Auf, Az-Zubair and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas are seeking permission to meet you. Umar said, yes. So he admitted them, and they entered, greeted, and sat down. After a short while, Yarfa came again and said to Umar, shall I admit Ali and Abbas? Umar said, yes. He admitted them, and when they entered, they greeted and sat down. Abbas said, O chief of the believers, judge between me and this, Ali. The group, Uthman and his companions said, O chief of the believers, judge between them and relieve one from the other. Umar said, wait, I beseech you by Allah by whose permission both the heaven and the earth stand fast. Do you know that Allah's apostle said, we, apostles, do not bequeath anything to our heirs, but whatever we leave is to be given in charity, and by that Allah's apostles meant himself? The group said, he did say so. Umar then turned towards all and Abbas and said, I beseech you both by Allah, do you know that Allah's apostle said that? They said, yes. Umar said, now let me talk to you about this matter. Allah favored his apostle with something of this property, war booty, which he did not give to anybody else. And Allah said, and what Allah has bestowed on his apostle as FAI booty, from them for which you made no expedition with either cavalry or camelry. Allah is able to do all things. 59.6. So this property was especially granted to Allah's apostle. But by Allah, he neither withheld it from you, nor did he keep it for himself and deprive you of it, but he gave it all to you, and distributed it among you, till only this remained out of it. And out of this property Allah's apostle used to provide his family with their yearly needs, and whatever remained, he would spend where Allah's property, the revenues of zakat, used to be spent. Allah's apostle kept on acting like this throughout his lifetime. Now I beseech you by Allah, do you know that? They said yes. Then Umar said to Ali and Abbas, I beseech you by Allah, do you both know that? They said yes. Umar added, when Allah had taken his apostle unto him, Abu Bakr said, I am the successor of Allah's apostle. So he took charge of that property, and did with it the same what Allah's apostle used to do, and both of you knew all about it then. Then Umar turned towards Ali and Abbas and said, you both claim that Abu Bakr was so-and-so, but Allah knows that he was honest, sincere, pious, and right in that matter. Then Allah caused Abu Bakr to die, and I said, I am the successor of Allah's apostle and Abu Bakr. So I kept this property in my possession for the first 2 years of my rule, and I used to do the same with it as Allah's apostle and Abu Bakr used to do. Later both of you, Ali and Abbas, came to me with the same claim and the same problem. O Abbas, you came to me demanding your share from the inheritance of the son of your brother, and he, Ali, came to me demanding his wife's share from the inheritance of her father. So I said to you, if you wish, I will hand over this property to you, on condition that you both promise me before Allah that you will manage it in the same way as Allah's apostle and Abu Bakr did, and as I have done since the beginning of my rule. Otherwise you should not speak to me about it. So you both said, hand over this property to us on this condition. And on this condition I handed it over to you. I beseech you by Allah, did I hand it over to them on that condition? The group said, yes. Umar then faced Ali and Abbas and said, I beseech you both by Allah, did I hand it over to you both on that condition? They both said yes. Umar added, do you want me now to give a decision other than that? By him with whose permission, order, both the heaven and the earth stand fast, I will never give any decision other than that till the hour is established. But if you are unable to manage it, that property, then return it to me and I will be sufficient for it on your behalf. Volume 7, Book 64, number 272. Narrated by Aisha Hind bint Utbah came and said, O Allah's apostle, Abu Sufyan is a miser, so is it sinful of me to feed our children from his property? Allah's apostle said, no, except if you take for your needs what is just and reasonable. Volume 7, Book 64, number 273, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, if the wife gives of her husband's property, something in charity, without his permission, he will get half the reward. Volume 7, Book 64, number 274. Narrated by Ali. Fatima went to the Prophet complaining about the bad effect of the stone hand mill on her hand. She heard that the Prophet had received a few slave girls. But, when she came there, she did not find him, so she mentioned her problem to Aisha. When the Prophet came, Aisha informed him about that. Ali added, so the Prophet came to us when we had gone to bed. We wanted to get up, on his arrival, but he said, stay where you are. Then he came and sat between me and her, and I felt the coldness of his feet on my abdomen. He said, shall I direct you to something better than what you have requested? When you go to bed, say Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times, for that is better for you than a servant. Volume 7, Book 64, number 275. Narrated by Ali bin Abi Talib. Fatima came to the Prophet asking for a servant. He said, may I inform you of something better than that? When you go to bed, recite Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times. All added, I have never failed to recite it ever since. Somebody asked, even on the night of the Battle of Siffin? He said, no, even on the night of the Battle of Siffin. Volume 7, Book 64, number 276, narrated by Al-Aswad bin Yazid. I asked Aisha, what did the Prophet use to do at home? She said, he used to work for his family, and when he heard the adhan, call for the prayer, he would go out. Volume 7, Book 64, number 277, narrated by Aisha Hind bint Utbah said, O Allah's apostle, Abu Sufyan is a miser and he does not give me what is sufficient for me and my children. Can I take of his property without his knowledge? The Prophet said, take what is sufficient for you and your children, and the amount should be just and reasonable. Volume 7, Book 64, number 278, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, the best women among the camel riders are the women of Quraysh. Another narrator said, the Prophet said, the righteous among the women of Quraysh are those who are kind to their young ones and who look after their husband's property. Volume 7, Book 64, number 279, narrated by Ali. The Prophet gave me a silk suit and I wore it, but when I noticed anger on his face, I cut it and distributed it among my womenfolk. Volume 7, Book 64, number 280, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. My father died and left 7 or 9 girls, and I married a matron. Allah's apostle said to me, "O Jabir, have you married?" I said, "Yes." He said, "A virgin or a matron?" I replied, "A matron." He said, "Why not a virgin, so that you might play with her and she with you, and you might amuse her and she amuse you?" I said, "Abdullah, my father, died and left girls, and I dislike to marry a girl like them, so I married a lady, matron, so that she may look after them." On that he said, "May Allah bless you," or "That is good." Volume 7, Book 64, number 281, narrated by Abu Huraira. A man came to the Prophet and said, "I am ruined." The Prophet said, "Why?" He said, "I had sexual intercourse with my wife while fasting, in the month of Ramadan." The Prophet said to him, "Manumit a slave as expiation." He replied, "I cannot afford that." The Prophet said, "Then fast for 2 successive months." He said, "I cannot." The Prophet said, "Then feed 60 poor persons." He said, "I have nothing to do that." In the meantime, a basket full of dates was brought to the Prophet. He said, "Where is the questioner?" The man said, "I am here." The Prophet said to him, "Give this basket of dates in charity, as expiation." He said, "O Allah's apostle, shall I give it to poorer people than us? By him who sent you with the truth, there is no family between Medina's 2 mountains poorer than us." The Prophet smiled till his premolar teeth became visible. He then said, "Then take it." Volume 7, Book 64, number 282, narrated by Salama. I said, "O Allah's apostle, shall I get a reward in the hereafter if I spend on the children of Abu Salama and do not leave them like this and like this, that is poor, but treat them like my children?" The Prophet said, "Yes, you will be rewarded for that which you will spend on them." Volume 7, Book 64, number 283, narrated by Aisha Hind bint Utbah, said, "O Allah's apostle, Abu Sufyan is a miser. Is there any harm if I take of his property what will cover me and my children's needs?" The Prophet said, "Take according to your needs, in a reasonable manner." Volume 7, Book 64, number 284, narrated by Abu Huraira. A dead man in debt used to be brought to Allah's apostle, who would ask, "Has he left anything to repay his debts?" If he was informed that he had left something to cover his debts, the Prophet would offer the funeral prayer for him. Otherwise, he would say to the Muslims present there, "Offer the funeral prayer for your friend." But when Allah helped the Prophet to gain victory on his expeditions, he said, "I am closer to the believers than themselves, so if one of the believers dies in debt, I will repay it. But if he leaves wealth, it will be for his heirs." Volume 7, Book 64, number 285, narrated by Habiba, the wife of the Prophet. I said, "O Allah's apostle, will you marry my sister, the daughter of Abu Sufyan?" The Prophet said, "Do you like that?" I said, "Yes, for I am not your only wife, and the person I like most to share the good with me is my sister." He said, "That is not lawful for me." I said, "O Allah's apostle, we have heard that you want to marry Dura, the daughter of Abu Salama." He said, "You mean the daughter of Salama?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Even if she were not my stepdaughter, she is unlawful for me, for she is my foster niece. Thuwaiba suckled me and Abu Salama, so you should not present to me your daughters and sisters." Narrated Ursa. Thuwaiba had been a slave girl whom Abu Lahab had emancipated. Volume 7, Book 65, number 286, narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. The Prophet said, "Give food to the hungry, pay a visit to the sick, and release, set free, the one in captivity by paying his ransom." Volume 7, Book 65, number 287, narrated by Abu Huraira. The family of Muhammad did not eat their fill for 3 successive days till he died. Volume 7, Book 65, number 287, narrated by Abu Huraira. Once, while I was in a state of fatigue because of severe hunger, I met Umar bin al-Khattab, so I asked him to recite a verse from Allah's book to me. He entered his house and interpreted it to me. Then I went out, and after walking for a short distance, I fell on my face because of fatigue and severe hunger. Suddenly, I saw Allah's apostle standing by my head. He said, "O Abu Huraira." I replied, "Labaik, O Allah's apostle, and Sadaik." Then he held me by the hand and made me get up. Then he came to know what I was suffering from. He took me to his house and ordered a big bowl of milk for me. I drank thereof, and he said, "Drink more, O Abu Hir." So I drank again, whereupon he again said, "Drink more." So I drank more till my belly became full and looked like a bowl. Afterwards I met Umar and mentioned to him what had happened to me, and said to him, "Somebody, who had more right than you, O Umar, took over the case. By Allah, I asked you to recite a verse to me while I knew it better than you." On that, Umar said to me, "By Allah, if I admitted and entertained you, it would have been dearer to me than having nice red camels." Volume 7, Book 65, number 288, narrated by Umar bin Abi Salama. I was a boy under the care of Allah's apostle, and my hand used to go around the dish while I was eating. So Allah's apostle said to me, "O boy, mention the name of Allah, and eat with your right hand, and eat of the dish what is nearer to you." Since then I have applied those instructions when eating. Volume 7, Book 65, number 289, narrated by Umar bin al-Salama, who was the son of Salama, the wife of the Prophet. Once I ate a meal with Allah's apostle, and I was eating from all sides of the dish. So Allah's apostle said to me, "Eat of the dish what is nearer to you." Volume 7, Book 65, number 290, narrated by Wahb bin Kaysan, Abi Nuaym. A meal was brought to Allah's apostle while his stepson, Umar bin Abi Salama, was with him. Allah's apostle said to him, "Mention the name of Allah and eat of the dish what is nearer to you." Volume 7, Book 65, number 291, narrated by Anas bin Malik. A tailor invited Allah's apostle to a meal which he had prepared. I went along with Allah's apostle and saw him seeking to eat the pieces of gourd from the various sides of the dish. Since that day I have liked to eat gourd. Umar bin Abi Salama said, "The Prophet said to me, 'Eat with your right hand.'" Volume 7, Book 65, number 292, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet used to love to start doing things from the right side whenever possible, in performing ablution, putting on his shoes and combing his hair. Al-Ash'ath said, "The Prophet used to do so in all his affairs." Volume 7, Book 65, number 293, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Abu Talha said to Sulaim, "I have heard the voice of Allah's apostle which was feeble, and I think that he is hungry. Have you got something to eat?" She took out some loaves of barley bread, then took her face-covering sheet and wrapped the bread in part of it, and pushed it under my garment, and turned the rest of it around my body and sent me to Allah's apostle. I went with that, and found Allah's apostle in the mosque with some people. I stood up near them, and Allah's apostle asked me, "Have you been sent by Abu Talha?" I said, "Yes." He asked, "With some food for us?" I said, "Yes." Then Allah's apostle said to all those who were with him, "Get up." He set out, and all the people accompanied him, and I proceeded ahead of them till I came to Abu Talha. Abu Talha then said, "O Sulaim, Allah's apostle has arrived along with the people, and we do not have food enough to feed them all." She said, "Allah and his apostle know better." So Abu Talha went out till he met Allah's apostle. Then Abu Talha and Allah's apostle came and entered the house. Allah's apostle said, Sulaim, bring whatever you have." She brought that very bread. The Prophet ordered that it be crushed into small pieces, and Sulaim pressed a skin of butter on it. Then Allah's apostle said whatever Allah wished him to say to bless the food, and then added, "Admit 10 men." So they were admitted, ate their fill, and went out. The Prophet then said, "Admit 10 more." They were admitted, ate their full, and went out. He then again said, "Admit 10 more." They were admitted, ate their fill, and went out. He admitted 10 more, and so all those people ate their fill, and they were 80 men. Volume 7, Book 65, number 294, narrated by Abdur Rahman bin Abu Bakr. We were 130 men sitting with the Prophet. The Prophet said, "Have any one of you any food with him?" It happened that one man had 1 saw of wheat flour, or so, which was turned into dough then. After a while, a tall, lanky pagan came, driving some sheep. The Prophet asked, "Will you sell us a sheep, or give it to us as a gift?" The pagan said, "No, but I will sell it." So the Prophet bought from him a sheep which was slaughtered, and then the Prophet ordered that the liver, the kidneys, lungs, and heart, etc., of that sheep be roasted. By Allah, none of those 130 men but had his share of those things. The Prophet gave to those who were present, and also kept a share for those who were absent. He then served that cooked sheep in 2 big trays, and we all ate together our fill. Yet there remained a part of it in those 2 trays which I carried on the camel. Volume 7, Book 65, number 295, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet died when we had satisfied our hunger with the 2 black things, that is, dates and water. Volume 7, Book 65, number 296, narrated by Suwaid bin An-Numan. We went out with Allah's apostle to Khaybar, and when we were at As-Saba, Yahya, a sub-narrator, said, As-Saba is a place at a distance of 1 day's journey to Khaybar. Allah's apostle asked the people to bring their food, but there was nothing with the people except sawik. So we all chewed and ate of it. Then the Prophet asked for some water and he rinsed his mouth, and we too rinsed our mouths. Then he led us in the Maghrib prayer without performing ablution, again. Volume 7, Book 65, number 297, narrated by Qatada. We were in the company of Anas, whose baker was with him. Anas said, the Prophet did not eat thin bread or a roasted sheep till he met Allah, died. Volume 7, Book 65, number 298, narrated by Anas. To the best of my knowledge, the Prophet did not take his meals in a big tray at all, nor did he ever eat well-baked thin bread, nor did he ever eat at a dining table. Volume 7, Book 65, number 299, narrated by Anas. The Prophet halted to consummate his marriage with Safiya. I invited the Muslims to his wedding banquet. He ordered that leather dining sheets be spread. Then dates, dried yogurt, and butter were put on those sheets. Anas added, the Prophet consummated his marriage with Safiya during a journey, whereupon hais, sweet dish, was served on a leather dining sheet. Volume 7, Book 65, number 300, narrated by Wahb bin Kaysan. The people of Sham taunted Abdullah bin Az-Zubair by calling him the son of Datin Natakain, the woman who has 2 waist belts. His mother, Asma, said to him, O my son, they taunt you with Natakain. Do you know what the Natakain were? That was my waist belt, which I divided in 2 parts. I tied the water skin of Allah's apostle with 1 part, and with the other part I tied his food container. Volume 7, Book 65, number 301, narrated by Ibn Abbas, that his aunt, Hufayd bint al-Harith bin Hazan, presented to the Prophet butter, dried yogurt, and mastigurs. The Prophet invited the people to those mastigurs, and they were eaten on his dining sheet, but the Prophet did not eat of it, as if he disliked it. Nevertheless, if it was unlawful to eat that, the people would not have eaten it on the dining sheet of the Prophet, nor would he have ordered that they be eaten. Volume 7, Book 65, number 302, narrated by Suwaid bin An-Numan. That while they were with the Prophet at As-Saba, which was at a distance of 1 day's journey from Khaybar, the prayer became due, and the Prophet asked the people for food, but there was nothing with the people except sawik. He ate of it, and we ate along with him, and then he asked for water and rinsed his mouth with it, and then offered the Maghrib prayer, and we too offered the prayer, but the Prophet did not perform ablution, again after eating the sawik. Volume 7, Book 65, number 303, narrated by Khalid bin al-Walid, that he went with Allah's apostle to the house of Maimuna, who was his and Ibn Abbas' aunt. He found with her a roasted mastigur, which her sister Hufayda bint al-Harith had brought from Najd. Maimuna presented the mastigur before Allah's apostle, who rarely started eating any unfamiliar food before it was described and named for him. But that time, Allah's apostle stretched his hand towards the meat of the mastigur, whereupon a lady from among those who were present said, You should inform Allah's apostle of what you have presented to him. O Allah's apostle, it is the meat of a mastigur. On learning that, Allah's apostle withdrew his hand from the meat of the mastigur. Khalid bin al-Walid said, O Allah's apostle, is this unlawful to eat? Allah's apostle replied, No, but it is not found in the land of my people, so I do not like it. Khalid said, Then I pulled the mastigur, meat, towards me and ate it while Allah's apostle was looking at me. Volume 7, Book 65, number 304, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, The food for 2 persons is sufficient for 3, and the food of 3 persons is sufficient for 4 persons. Volume 7, Book 65, number 305, narrated by Nafi ibn Umar never used to take his meal unless a poor man was called to eat with him. One day I brought a poor man to eat with him. The man ate too much, whereupon Ibn Umar said, O Nafi, don't let this man enter my house, for I heard the Prophet saying, A believer eats in 1 intestine, is satisfied with a little food, and a kafir, unbeliever, eats in 7 intestines, eats much food. Volume 7, Book 65, number 306, narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's apostle said, A believer eats in 1 intestine, is satisfied with a little food, and a kafir, unbeliever, or a hypocrite eats in 7 intestines, eats too much. Volume 7, Book 65, number 307, narrated by Amr Abu Nahik was avaricious eater. Ibn Umar said to him, Allah's apostle said, A kafir, unbeliever, eats in 7 intestines, eats much. On that Abu Nahik said, But I believe in Allah and His Apostle. Volume 7, Book 65, number 308, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's Apostle said, A Muslim eats in 1 intestine, that is, he is satisfied with a little food, while a kafir, unbeliever, eats in 7 intestines, eats much. Volume 7, Book 65, number 309, narrated by Abu Huraira. A man used to eat much, but when he embraced Islam, he started eating less. That was mentioned to the Prophet, who then said, A believer eats in 1 intestine, is satisfied with a little food, and a kafir eats in 7 intestines, eats much. Volume 7, Book 65, number 310, narrated by Abu Juhayfa. Allah's Apostle said, I do not take my meals while leaning against something. Volume 7, Book 65, number 311, narrated by Abu Juhayfa. While I was with the Prophet, he said to a man who was with him, I do not take my meals while leaning. Volume 7, Book 65, number 312, narrated by Khalid bin al-Walid. A roasted mastigar was brought to the Prophet, who stretched his hand towards it to eat it. But it was said to him, It is a mastigar. So he withdrew his hand. Khalid asked, Is it unlawful to eat? The Prophet said, No, but it is not found in the land of my people, and that is why I do not like eating it. So Khalid started eating it, while Allah's Apostle was looking at him. Another said, Al-Khazira is prepared from bran, while Al-Harira is prepared from milk. Volume 7, Book 65, number 313, narrated by Urban bin Malik, who attended the Badr battle and was from the Ansar, that he came to the Prophet and said, O Allah's Apostle, I have lost my eyesight and I lead my people in the prayer, as an imam. When it rains, the valley which is between me and my people flows with water, and then I cannot go to their mosque to lead them in the prayer. O Allah's Apostle, I wish that you could come and pray in my house so that I may take it as a praying place. The Prophet said, Allah willing, I will do that. The next morning, soon after the sun had risen, Allah's Apostle came with Abu Bakr. The Prophet asked for the permission to enter and I admitted him. The Prophet had not sat till he had entered the house and said to me, Where do you like me to pray in your house? I pointed at a place in my house, whereupon he stood and said, Allahu Akbar. We lined behind him and he prayed 2 rakat and finished it with taslim. We then requested him to stay for a special meal of khazira, which we had prepared. A large number of men from the adjoining area gathered in the house. One of them said, Where is Malik bin ad-Dukshun? Another man said, He is a hypocrite and does not love Allah and His Apostle. The Prophet said, Do not say so. Do you not think that he has said, None has the right to be worshipped but Allah, seeking Allah's pleasure? The man said, Allah and His Apostle know better, but we have always seen him mixing with hypocrites and giving them advice. The Prophet said, Allah has forbidden the hell fire for those who testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, seeking Allah's pleasure. Volume 7, Book 65, number 314, narrated by Ibn Abbas. My aunt presented roasted mastigars, IQT and milk to the Prophet. The mastigars were put on his dining sheet, and if it was unlawful to eat, it would not have been put there. The Prophet drank the milk and ate the IQT only. Volume 7, Book 65, number 315, narrated by Sal bin Sa'd. We used to be happy on Fridays, for there was an old lady who used to pull out the roots of silk and put it in a cooking pot with some barley. When we had finished the prayer, we would visit her and she would present that dish before us. So we used to be happy on Fridays because of that. And we never used to take our meals or have a midday nap except after the Friday prayer. By Allah, that meal contained no fat. Volume 7, Book 65, number 316, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet ate of the meat of a shoulder, by cutting the meat with his teeth, and then got up and offered the prayer without performing the ablution anew. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet took out a bone with meat on it from a cooking pot, and ate of it, and then offered the prayer without performing ablution anew. Volume 7, Book 65, number 317, narrated by Abu Qatada. We went out towards Mecca with the Prophet. Volume 7, Book 65, number 318, narrated by Abu Qatada. Once, while I was sitting with the companions of the Prophet at a station on the road to Mecca, and Allah's Apostle was stationing ahead of us, and all the people were assuming ihram while I was not. My companion saw an onager while I was busy mending my shoes. They did not inform me of the onager, but they wished that I would see it. Suddenly I looked and saw the onager. Then I headed towards my horse, saddled it and rode. but I forgot to take the lash and the spear. So I said to them, my companions, "Give me the lash and the spear." But they said, "No, by Allah we will not help you in any way to hunt it." I got angry, dismounted, took it the spear and the lash, rode. The horse chased the onager and wounded it, then I brought it when it had died. My companions started eating of its cooked meat, but they suspected that it might be unlawful to eat of its meat while they were in a state of ihram. Then I proceeded further, and I kept one of its forelegs with me. When we met Allah's apostle, we asked him about that. He said, "Have you some of its meat with you?" I gave him that foreleg, and he ate the meat till he stripped the bone of its flesh, although he was in a state of ihram. Volume 7, Book 65, number 320, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet never criticized any food he was invited to, but he used to eat if he liked the food, and leave it if he disliked it. Volume 7, Book 65, number 321, narrated by Abu Hazim. That he asked Saul, "Did you use white flour during the lifetime of the Prophet?" Saul replied, "No." Hazim asked, "Did you use to sift barley flour?" He said, "No, but we used to blow off the husk of the barley." Volume 7, Book 65, number 322, narrated by Abu Huraira. Once the Prophet distributed dates among his companions and gave each one 7 dates. He gave me 7 dates too, one of which was dry and hard, but none of the other dates was more liked by me than that one, for it prolonged my chewing it. Volume 7, Book 65, number 323, narrated by Sa'd. I was one of the first 7 who had embraced Islam with Allah's apostle, and we had nothing to eat then, except the leaves of the habala or hubula tree, so that our stool used to be similar to that of sheep. Now the tribe of Bani Asad wants to teach me Islam. I would be a loser and all my efforts would be in vain if I learn Islam anew from them. Volume 7, Book 65, number 324, narrated by Abu Hazim. I asked Sahl bin Sa'd, "Did Allah's apostle ever eat white flour?" Sahl said, "Allah's apostle never saw white flour since Allah sent him as an apostle till he took him unto him." I asked, "Did the people have use sieves during the lifetime of Allah's apostle?" Sahl said, "Allah's apostle never saw used a sieve since Allah sent him as an apostle until he took him unto him." I said, "How could you eat barley unsifted?" He said, "We used to grind it and then blow off its husk, and after the husk flew away, we used to prepare the dough, bake, and eat it." Volume 7, Book 65, number 325, narrated by Abu Huraira. That he passed by a group of people in front of whom there was a roasted sheep. They invited him, but he refused to eat and said, "Allah's apostle left this world without satisfying his hunger even with barley bread." Volume 7, Book 65, number 326, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet never took his meals at a dining table, nor in small plates, and he never ate thin, well-baked bread. The sub-narrator asked Qatada, "Over what did they use to take their meals?" Qatada said, "On leather dining sheets." Volume 7, Book 65, number 327, narrated by Aisha. The family of Muhammad had not eaten wheat bread to their satisfaction for 3 consecutive days since his arrival at Medina, till he died. Volume 7, Book 65, number 328, narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, that whenever one of her relatives died, the women assembled and then dispersed, returned to their houses, except her relatives and close friends. She would order that a pot of talbina be cooked. Then tharid, a dish prepared from meat and bread, would be prepared and the talbina would be poured on it. Aisha would say to the women, "Eat of it, for I heard Allah's apostle saying, the talbina soothes the heart of the patient and relieves him from some of his sadness." Volume 7, Book 65, number 329, narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. The Prophet said, "Many men reached perfection, but none among the women reached perfection except Mary, the daughter of Imran and Asia, Pharaoh's wife. And the superiority of Aisha to other women is like the superiority of tharid to other kinds of food." Volume 7, Book 65, number 330, narrated by Anas. The Prophet said, "The superiority of Aisha to other women is like the superiority of tharid to other kinds of food." Volume 7, Book 65, number 331, narrated by Anas. I went along with the Prophet to the house of a young tailor of his. The tailor presented a dish of tharid to the Prophet and resumed his work. The Prophet started picking the pieces of gourd, and I too started picking them and putting it before him. Since then I have always loved to eat gourd. Volume 7, Book 65, number 332, narrated by Qatada. We used to visit Anas bin Malik while his baker was standing and baking. Anas would say, "Eat." I do not know that the Prophet had ever seen well-baked bread till he met Allah, nor had he ever seen a roasted sheep with his own eyes. Volume 7, Book 65, number 333, narrated by Amr bin Umayyah ad-Damri. I saw Allah's apostle cutting part of the shoulder of mutton with a knife. He ate of it, and then was called for prayer, whereupon he got up and put down the knife and offered the prayer without performing new ablution. Volume 7, Book 65, number 334, narrated by Abis. I asked Aisha, did the Prophet forbid eating the meat of sacrifices offered on Eid al-Adha for more than 3 days? She said, the Prophet did not do this, except in the year when the people were hungry, so he wanted the rich to feed the poor. But later we used to store even a trotter of a sheep to eat it 15 days later. She was asked, what compelled you to do so? She smiled and said, the family of Muhammad did not eat to their satisfaction white bread with meat soup for 3 successive days till he met Allah. Volume 7, Book 65, number 335, narrated by Jabir. We used to carry the meat of the hadis, sacrificed animals, to Medina during the lifetime of the Prophet. Volume 7, Book 65, number 336, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Allah's apostle said to Abu Talha, seek one of your boys to serve me. Abu Talha mounted me behind him, on his riding animal, and took me to the Prophet. So I used to serve Allah's apostle whenever he dismounted, to stay somewhere. I used to hear him saying very often, O Allah, I seek refuge with you from having worries, sadness, helplessness, laziness, miserliness, cowardice, from being heavily in debt, and from being overpowered by other persons unjustly. I kept on serving till we returned from the Battle of Khaybar. The Prophet then brought Safiya bint Huyay, whom he had won from the war booty. I saw him folding up a gown or a garment for her to sit on behind him, on his she-camel. When he reached As-Saba, he prepared hais and placed it on a dining sheet. Then he sent me to invite men, who came and ate, and that was his and Safiya's wedding banquet. Then the Prophet proceeded, and when he noticed the mountain of Uhud, he said, this mountain loves us, and we love it. When we approached Medina, he said, O Allah, I make the area between its 2 mountains a sanctuary as Abraham has made Mecca a sanctuary. O Allah, bless their mud and saw, special kinds of measure. Volume 7, Book 65, number 337. Narrated by Abdurrahman bin Abi Layla. We were sitting in the company of Hudhaifa, who asked for water, and a Magian brought him water. But when he placed the cup in his hand, he threw it at him and said, had I not forbidden him to do so more than once or twice? He wanted to say, I would not have done so, adding, but I heard the Prophet saying, do not wear silk or dibaha, and do not drink in silver or golden vessels, and do not eat in plates of such metals, for such things are for the unbelievers in this worldly life, and for us in the hereafter. Volume 7, Book 65, number 338. Narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Allah's apostle said, the example of a believer who recites the Quran is that of a citron which smells good and tastes good, and the example of a believer who does not recite the Quran is that of a date which has no smell but tastes sweet, and the example of a hypocrite who recites the Quran is that of an aromatic plant which smells good but tastes bitter, and the example of a hypocrite who does not recite the Quran is that of a colocynth plant which has no smell and is bitter in taste. Volume 7, Book 65, number 339, narrated by Anas. The Prophet said, the superiority of Aisha to other ladies is like the superiority of tharid to other kinds of food. Volume 7, Book 65, number 340, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, traveling is a kind of torture as it prevents one from sleeping and eating, so when one has finished his job, he should return quickly to his family. Volume 7, Book 65, number 341, narrated by Qasim bin Muhammad. 3 traditions have been established because of Barira. Aisha intended to buy her and set her free, but Barira's master said, her wala will be for us. Aisha mentioned that to Allah's apostle, who said, you could accept their condition if you wished, for the wala is for the one who manumits the slave. Barira was manumitted. Then she was given the choice either to stay with her husband or leave him. One day Allah's apostle entered Aisha's house while there was a cooking pot of food boiling on the fire. The Prophet asked for lunch, and he was presented with bread and some extra food from the homemade udum, for example, soup. He asked, don't I see meat being cooked? They said, Yes, O Allah's apostle, but it is the meat that has been given to Barira in charity, and she has given it to us as a present. He said, For Barira it is alms, but for us it is a present. Volume 7, Book 65, number 342. Narrated by Aisha, Allah's apostle used to love sweet edible things and honey. Volume 7, Book 65, number 343. Narrated by Abu Huraira. I used to accompany Allah's apostle to fill my stomach, and that was when I did not eat baked bread nor wear silk. Neither a male nor a female slave used to serve me, and I used to bind stones over my belly and ask somebody to recite a Quranic verse for me, though I knew it, so that he might take me to his house and feed me. Jafar bin Abi Talib was very kind to the poor, and he used to take us and feed us with whatever was available in his house, and if nothing was available, he used to give us the empty honey or butter skin, which we would tear and lick whatever was in it. Volume 7, Book 65, number 344, narrated by Anas, Allah's apostle, went to the house of his slave tailor, and he was offered a dish of gourd, of which he started eating. I have loved to eat gourd since I saw Allah's apostle eating it. Volume 7, Book 65, number 345, narrated by Abu Masud al-Ansari. There was a man called Abu Shuaib, and he had a slave who was a butcher. He said to his slave, Prepare a meal to which I may invite Allah's apostle along with 4 other men. So he invited Allah's apostle and 4 other men. But another man followed them, whereupon the Prophet said, You have invited me as one of 5 guests, but now another man has followed us. If you wish, you can admit him, and if you wish, you can refuse him. On that the host said, But I admit him. Narrated Muhammad bin Ismail. If guests are sitting at a dining table, they do not have the right to carry food from other tables to theirs, but they can pass on food from their own table to each other, otherwise they should leave it. Volume 7, Book 65, number 346, narrated by Anas. I was a young boy when I once was walking with Allah's apostle. Allah's apostle entered the house of his slave tailor, and the latter brought a dish filled with food covered with pieces of gourd. Allah's apostle started picking and eating the gourd. When I saw that, I started collecting and placing the gourd before him. Then the slave returned to his work. Anas added, I have kept on loving gourd since I saw Allah's apostle doing what he was doing. Volume 7, Book 65, number 347. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. A tailor invited the Prophet to a meal which he had prepared, and I went along with the Prophet. The tailor presented barley bread and soup containing gourd and cured meat. I saw the Prophet picking the pieces of gourd from around the dish, and since then I have kept on liking gourd. Volume 7, Book 65, number 348. Narrated by Anas. I saw the Prophet being served with soup and containing gourd and cured meat, and I saw him picking and eating the pieces of gourd. Volume 7, Book 65, number 349. Narrated by Aisha. The Prophet did not do that is, forbade the storage of the meat of sacrifices for 3 days, except he did so that the rich would feed the poor. But later we used to keep even trotters to cook. 15 days later, the family of Muhammad did not eat wheat bread with meat or soup to their satisfaction for 3 successive days. Volume 7, Book 65, number 350, narrated by Anas bin Malik. A tailor invited Allah's apostle to a meal which he had prepared. I went with Allah's apostle to that meal, and the tailor served the Prophet with barley bread and soup of gourd and cured meat. I saw Allah's apostle picking the pieces of gourd from around the dish, and since then I have kept on liking gourd. Volume 7, Book 65, number 351, narrated by Abdullah bin Jafar bin Abi Talib. I saw Allah's apostle eating fresh dates with snake cucumber. Volume 7, Book 65, number 352, narrated by Abu Uthman. I was a guest of Abu Huraira for 7 days. Abu Huraira, his wife and his slave used to get up and remain awake for 1/3 of the night by turns. Each would offer the night prayer, and then awaken the other. I heard Abu Huraira saying, Allah's apostle distributed dates among his companions, and my share was 7 dates, one of which was a hashafa, a date which dried on the tree before it was fully ripe. Volume 7, Book 65, number 353, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet distributed dates among us, and my share was 5 dates, 4 of which were good, and one was a hashafa, and I found the hashafa the hardest for my teeth. Volume 7, Book 65, number 354, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. There was a Jew in Medina who used to lend me money up to the season of plucking dates. Jabir had a piece of land which was on the way to Ruma. That year the land was not promising, so the payment of the debt was delayed 1 year. The Jew came to me at the time of plucking, but gathered nothing from my land. I asked him to give me 1 year respite, but he refused. This news reached the Prophet, whereupon he said to his companions, "Let us go and ask the Jew for respite for Jabir." All of them came to me in my garden, and the Prophet started speaking to the Jew, but Jew said, "O Abu Qasim, I will not grant him respite." When the Prophet saw the Jew's attitude, he stood up and walked all around the garden and came again and talked to the Jew, but the Jew refused his request. I got up and brought some ripe fresh dates and put it in front of the Prophet. He ate and then said to me, "Where is your hut, O Jabir?" I informed him, and he said, "Spread out a bed for me in it." I spread out a bed, and he entered and slept. When he woke up, I brought some dates to him again, and he ate of it and then got up and talked to the Jew again, but the Jew again refused his request. Then the Prophet got up for the second time, amidst the palm trees loaded with fresh dates, and said, "O Jabir, pluck dates to repay your debt." The Jew remained with me while I was plucking the dates, till I paid him all his right, yet there remained extra quantity of dates. So I went out and proceeded till I reached the Prophet, and informed him of the good news, whereupon he said, "I testify that I am Allah's apostle." Volume 7, Book 65, number 355, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. While we were sitting with the Prophet, a spadix of palm tree was brought to him. The Prophet said, "There is a tree among the trees which is as blessed as a Muslim." I thought that it was the date palm tree, and intended to say, "It is the date palm tree, O Allah's apostle." But I looked behind to see that I was the 10th and youngest of 10 men present there, so I kept quiet. Then the Prophet said, "It is the date palm tree." Volume 7, Book 65, number 356, narrated by Sa'd. Allah's apostle said, "He who eats 7 ajwa dates every morning will not be affected by poison or magic on the day he eats them." Volume 7, Book 65, number 357, narrated by Jabala bin Suhaim. At the time of Ibn az-Zubair, we were struck with famine, and he provided us with dates for our food. Abdullah bin Umar used to pass by us while we were eating, and say, "Do not eat 2 dates together at a time," for the Prophet forbade the taking of 2 dates together at a time, in a gathering. Ibn Umar used to add, "Unless one takes the permission of one's companions." Volume 7, Book 65, number 358, narrated by Abdullah bin Jafar. I saw the Prophet eating fresh dates with snake cucumbers. Volume 7, Book 65, number 359, narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, "There is a tree among the trees which is similar to a Muslim in goodness, and that is the date palm tree." Volume 7, Book 65, number 360, narrated by Abdullah bin Jafar. I saw Allah's apostle eating fresh dates with snake cucumbers. Volume 7, Book 65, number 361, narrated by Anas. My mother, Sulaim, took a mud of barley grain, ground it and made porridge from it, and pressed over it a butter skin she had with her. Then she sent me to the Prophet, and I reached him while he was sitting with his companions. I invited him, whereupon he said, "And those who are with me?" I returned and said, "He says, and those who are with me?" Abu Talha went out to him and said, "O Allah's apostle, it is just a meal prepared by Sulaim." The Prophet entered, and the food was brought to him. He said, "Let 10 persons enter upon me." Those 10 entered and ate their fill. Again he said, "Let 10 more enter upon me." Those 10 entered and ate their fill. Then he said, "Let 10 more enter upon me." He called 40 persons in all. Then Allah's apostle ate and got up. I started looking at the food to see if it decreased or not. Volume 7, Book 65, number 362, narrated by Abdul Aziz. It was said to Anas, "What did you hear the Prophet saying about garlic?" Anas replied, "Whoever has eaten garlic should not approach our mosque." Volume 7, Book 65, number 363, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet said, "Whoever has eaten garlic or onion should keep away from us, or should keep away from our mosque." Volume 7, Book 65, number 364, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. We were with Allah's apostle collecting al-kabath at Marazaran. The Prophet said, "Collect the black ones, for they are better." Somebody said, "O Allah's apostle, have you ever shepherded sheep?" He said, "There has been no prophet but has shepherded them." Volume 7, Book 65, number 365, narrated by Suwaid bin An-Numan. We went out with Allah's apostle to Khaybar, and when we reached As-Saba, the Prophet asked for food, and he was offered nothing but sawiq. We ate, and then Allah's apostle stood up for the prayer. He rinsed his mouth with water, and we too rinsed our mouths. Narrated Suwaid. We went out with Allah's apostle to Khaybar, and when we reached As-Saba, which, Yahya says, is 1 day journey from Khaybar, the Prophet asked for food, and he was offered nothing but sawiq, which we chewed and ate. Then the Prophet asked for water and rinsed his mouth, and we too rinsed our mouths along with him. He then led us in the Maghrib prayer without performing ablution again. Volume 7, Book 65, number 366, narrated by Ibn Abbas, the Prophet said, "When you eat, do not wipe your hands till you have licked it, or had it licked by somebody else." Volume 7, Book 65, number 367, narrated by Sa'id bin al-Harith. That he asked Jabir bin Abdullah about performing ablution after taking a cooked meal. He replied, "It is not essential," and added, "We never used to get such kind of food during the lifetime of the Prophet except rarely. And if at all we got such a dish, we did not have any handkerchiefs to wipe our hands with, except the palms of our hands, our forearms, and our feet. We would perform the prayer thereafter without performing new ablution." Volume 7, Book 65, number 368, narrated by Abu Umama. Whenever the dining sheet of the Prophet was taken away, that is, whenever he finished his meal, he used to say, "Alhamdulillah kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fihi gaira, makfi wala muwada wala mustagna anhu rabuna." Volume 7, Book 65, number 369, narrated by Abu Umama. Whenever the Prophet finished his meals, or when his dining sheet was taken away, he used to say, "Praise be to Allah who has satisfied our needs and quenched our thirst. Your favor cannot be compensated or denied." Once he said, "Upraise be to you, O our Lord. Your favor cannot be compensated, nor can be left, nor can be dispensed with, O our Lord." Volume 7, Book 65, number 370, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "When your servant brings your food to you, if you do not ask him to join you, then at least ask him to take 1 or 2 handfuls, for he has suffered from its heat while cooking it, and has taken pains to cook it nicely." Volume 7, Book 65, number 371, narrated by Abu Masud al-Ansari. There was an Ansari man nicknamed Abu Shu'aib, who had a slave who was a butcher. He came to the Prophet while he was sitting with his companions and noticed the signs of hunger on the face of the Prophet. So he went to his butcher slave and said, "Prepare for me a meal sufficient for 5 persons, so that I may invite the Prophet along with 4 other men." He had the meal prepared for him and invited him. A 6th man followed them. The Prophet said, "O Abu Shu'aib, another man has followed us. If you wish, you may invite him, and if you wish, you may refuse him." Abu Shu'aib said, "No, I will admit him." Volume 7, Book 65, number 372, narrated by Amr bin Umayyah, that he saw Allah's apostle cutting a piece of mutton from its shoulder part he was carrying in his hand. When he was called for prayer, he put it down, and the knife with which he was cutting it. Then he stood up and offered the prayer without performing new ablution. Volume 7, Book 65, number 373, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, "If supper is served, and the Iqamah for Isha, prayer is proclaimed, start with you supper first." Volume 7, Book 65, number 373, narrated by Nafi. Once Ibn Umar was taking his supper while he was listening to the recitation of Quran by the Imam in the Isha prayer. Volume 7, Book 65, number 374, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet said, "If the Iqamah for Isha prayer is proclaimed and supper is served, take your supper first."